What do you think about that? Following God's rules to please him.
Hey guys, I'm John Fabarez, and I am a religious person. Odds are, you are too. Make no mistake, if you aren't religious, you were born into a distinctly religious world. Over 3/4 of the world holds to some sort of structured faith. That raises a couple questions. What is religion? And why is it such a popular concept?
How would you define religion?
Person's belief, like, in the higher power.
It's just kind of like a life way.
So what do you think the purpose of religion is?
It's sort of like a society's rule set, basically.
Well, I know as a Christian, the purpose of my religion is to someday make it to heaven and please God.
So why do you think that 3/4 of the people in this world are drawn to religion?
It keeps me kind of grounded.
They're all just hoping that there's gonna be something after death.
Today, we're going to tackle which religion gives the best answers to these questions. To figure that out, we've got a simple 2-question test. Number 1, is the religion internally consistent? And number 2, is it externally consistent? If a religion gives wrong answers to the 5 big questions, the entire religion fails the test, and it isn't worth believing. To help us on this journey, we're going to try to work smarter, not harder. We're only going to be looking at monotheistic religions, and before you object, hear us out. If we prove that a single God system is the only logical possibility, it would by necessity prove a multi-God system to be impossible. So now that the ground rules are set, let's jump in. Our first faith for examination is Judaism.
Do you know what the Jews say about the origin of life?
I don't personally know that, no.
I'm not exactly sure.
To get help on our survey of world religions, we sought out Alan Schliemann. Alan spent years studying faiths from all over the globe.
Jews believe in the Torah, the first 5 books of the Old Testament. First one being Genesis, and Genesis 1:1 teaches, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And so this is a statement that says that God is literally creating the universe ex nihilo, out of nothing. Yeah, that is certainly internally consistent with Judaism. And I would say more significantly is that it's externally consistent, because if you look at modern cosmology, the universe began to exist at a finite time in the past.
Jews also believe that the purpose of their life is to live adhering to all the teachings of God's rules. What do you think about that? Following God's rules to please him.
Now that is certainly internally consistent, because that is within the realm of what the Jewish scriptures teach. But I'd also argue that it's externally consistent. It resonates with our deepest intuitions that if there is a God who has created us, then it makes sense that our purpose would be to try to know who that creator God is and to give him credit for what he has done. Jews would say that the way we should live is in observance of the Torah. And so the Torah includes 613 commands that outline the dictates of God. That is certainly internally consistent because it's found within their most holy book.
Do you think it's possible for anyone to perfectly follow 613 laws like that?
No, of course not.
Not at all.
Yeah.
No.
Is it externally consistent? Well, it creates an impossible burden upon the person who wants to follow God. Who can follow 613 commands? Not only would that be overwhelming in terms of the amount of commands you'd have to know, but then to try to fulfill them would be impossible to do.
Do you know what Judaism teaches about how to deal with sin or forgiveness? Do you know what they teach about that?
I don't know how they go about it.
I'm assuming replace the bad stuff with good deeds.
Can their sins be forgiven?
Historically speaking, and of course biblically speaking, the Jews first had a tabernacle and then they had a temple. And in those two locations, there was the possibility that they could have and offer a blood sacrifice to atone for their sins. However, today that doesn't exist, right? The temple was destroyed. Now, some Jews suggest that through repentance today you can be forgiven. Another thing that some Jews say is that there are 3 pillars that they can follow which also will bring about forgiveness from God. The first pillar would be observance and studying of the Torah. The second would be prayer. And the third would be self-giving through charitable giving. See, this raises the question, if you can achieve forgiveness by simply repenting or following these three pillars, what was the point of having the sacrificial system in the first place? It makes it seem like either that was necessary or it wasn't. And so this raises the question about whether this system is really internally consistent. After you die, your body, of course, goes into the grave, and they believe in a soul. So your soul separates from your body and enters into the presence of God, where you'll face a heavenly tribunal. You'll be judged according to your deeds.
Then is their view of the afterlife internally and externally consistent?
I would say yes, that their view is internally consistent. It's certainly consistent with the Jewish scriptures and the Torah. And although we don't have necessarily objective evidence of a heaven or a hell, we do sense that there is a way in which this idea that we should be punished for bad deeds or rewarded for good deeds does seem to resonate with our deepest intuition. So that does seem to make sense in light of that.
Is Judaism something that is worth people's faith?
Although Judaism does identify that there is a God, that He did create us, that He does love us, He creates for us a standard that we cannot achieve and that we cannot be forgiven for when we do violate those standards.